So you've seen Dune Part 2 and you're craving more spice. Well, luckily for you, Denis Villeneuve has already confirmed that he's almost done with the script for Dune 3. Actually, it will be called Dune Messiah because technically it'll be Dune 2. So confusing! How are we going to do that in the metadata for that movie? Because it will be the third Dune film, but it's the second book. I think they should just keep calling it parts, quite frankly. What do you think they should do? Because it will be very confusing with the metadata. But really also, in addition to having to figure that out, and a couple of other things which we're going to discuss, Villeneuve really needs some sweet, sweet box office for this second film to get the go-ahead from Warner Brothers. But with Dune Part 2's box office prospects looking pretty rosy, let's talk about what's in store for Dune Messiah, which is, again, the second book in the series. Villeneuve decided to split the first book in half into the first two movies. So I'm really curious as to what you would call it. I mean, it should be called Dune 3. But then some people are going to be like, oh, excuse me. I mean, I guess then I'll just keep going with the parts. It's part 3, but it would be the second book. All right, now I'm going to include some slight spoilers here, but nothing that you would not see in the trailers for Dune 3. So you would know that these elements were being added to the film. However, on that note, I'm not going to include anything that would be considered a surprise withheld for the film itself. I don't want to ruin that experience for you. And I would hope that in the comments, those of you who are fans of the Dune novels will not ruin it for anyone either. All right, so right away, Messiah takes place 12 years after Dune. Like if Anya Taylor Joy is going to actually play Paul's sister Aaliyah, a lot of time will have passed, as she wasn't even born in Dune Part 2. Now, obviously, she's no ordinary baby, as she has been exposed to the water of life. So maybe she ages up a little faster than normal. Maybe she's got that going for her. Still, does Denis Villeneuve do a House of the Dragon? Worked for them quite well. And cast they didn't recast everybody, but different actors. How do you handle having that much older versions of Paul, Chani, and Princess Irulan? I know that some of you are like, well, just maybe don't have 12 years pass. But then I think Dune fans, from what I can see, are purists, and so I don't know how you're going to feel about maybe making it less time. But that's our first little roadblock. What would you like to see happen? Like, on the one hand, I think it would really help show the passage of time with older actors, and I thought that was very effective in House of the Dragon. But also, after 2 movies, Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, they are the Dune franchise to the general public. And also, Florence Pugh barely got started. Are we really gonna swap her out already? I guess they can just keep everybody and chalk up Anya Taylor Joy walking in and saying, hey, I'm your sister, right? It was just the water of life. Be like, wow, that water of life sure is crazy. Look what it did to your sister, Paul. It made her the same age as the rest of us. But you know who's coming back? Who has a very good reason, an in-story reason for looking exactly the same? No facial hair Jason Momoa. That's right. He really seems like a different person when he shaves. You know, not only visually, but with his acting in Dune Part 1. You know, I was so grateful that Austin Butler wasn't Elvis in Dune Part 2. And likewise, I was so grateful that Jason Momoa wasn't Jason Momoa in Dune Part 1. But he has never become someone else before or after. He's not a very serious guy. That's cool. I love that Jason Momoa loves himself so much. And he's like, you know what this film or television show needs? More Jason Momoa. But what Dune needs is the very specific and different Duncan Idaho. And again, maybe it's just the power of the shave. That's all he has to do, right? But he will return as Duncan Idaho. But wait a minute, wasn't Duncan Idaho killed? In a very moving sequence, by the way. I thought that was really well done. But he'll be back as a clone, here called a Ghola, a term coined by Dune. That's right, you might have heard the term Ghola before, but they were referencing Dune. Now, Dune's Gholas, I think, has influenced 2 other really big properties. Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, and then also, James Cameron must be so ticked off that Netflix brought back Avatar in a major way. He's like, brand confusion, and it's like, they were here first? They were, right? Yeah, I think they were. All right, so anyway, and also X-Men. All right, so Gholas can even have the memories of the original. And that reminds me of Avatar 2, where Stephen Lang's Avatar had the memories of the human version of him that was killed off. So even though they were technically two separate organic beings, because of the memory transfer and the fact that, there was some DNA, obviously, because they kind of looked a little bit the same, right? It was like a seamless transition almost. But, so like spiritually it was seamless, or mentally, even though science physically it was not. It was two very divided individuals. So I do wonder if James Cameron got that from Dune. And then later on in the Dune novels, the group that created Gholas uses them to become immortal as they keep making clones of themselves as they wear out, but all the time are able to retain all those memories. Eventually, hundreds of years of memories. But that reminds me of what they did with the X-Men. Jonathan Hickman is the type of guy who would reference Dune. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got that from Dune as well. So that's really interesting. Not only is it a good story, but you get to see how these different stories are influencing each other. So fun. And with the Gholas, comes a new group, the group that created the Gholas. They're called I want to make sure I get this right, the Bene Tleilax. Basically, a Tony Stark, Dr. Hemlock, Borg fever dream that takes technology to the extreme, inventing Gholas and so much more. And I wonder if Dave Filoni and the Star Wars crew are also influenced by Dune. That's really interesting. All right, and perhaps, Star Wars obviously is inspired by Dune in many ways, but it would seem maybe even down to cloning. And that makes the cloning, the direction that Star Wars is going in with cloning so aggressively, make a little more sense because it's part of their homage heritage, I guess you could say, right? And perhaps because the Bene Tleilax value, it's not so hard to say once you get the hang of it, value science above all else, they're not big physical specimens. They're instead described in the books as short dwarf-like creatures with gray skin, hair, and eyes. Although in some of the artist renderings I've seen for comics, etc., and fan art for Dune, they are not dwarves. But still, call your agent, Peter Dinklage, because there is a juicy role in Dune Messiah, Behaz. And I'd be like, Peter Dinklage, I think that has got your name all over it. As for other new characters that will need to be cast, there's Othem, who Behaz originally serves. I think I'm not pronouncing that one right. But Othem is a Fremen elite soldier who is loyal to Paul. But then here's the big one. This is the big new role to cast, Edric. And look at this guy. While Fayed Routho was a physical foe to Paul Atreides, Eric will be a mental one because Edric also has abilities of the mind. This is going to be a great voiceover opportunity and maybe have a motion capture element as well. So does Denis Villeneuve go for the master with Andy Serkis? Or maybe try someone else. There's Benedict Cumberbatch, who has a ton of experience with voiceover work combined with motion capture, and I think he'd be a very good fit with the Dune cast. Although so would Andy Serkis. I do wonder how this character will be brought to life. You could do practical makeup like with Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron. So there are a couple of choices there. I kind of like Benny C for that part. All right, but what is Denis Villeneuve going to do about Dune Messiah's lack of action? This is a big problem. Especially after the very action-intense Dune Part 2. Some of you were like, that wasn't a lot of action, but it was a lot more action than Dune 1. I feel Dune 2 had a lot of action. Do you? I thought that it did. But there are no great battles in Messiah. There's no one-on-one fights. Instead, it's a game of chess. You've got royal intrigue, power plays, a race to produce an heir from Chani or Princess Irulan, and mind games. How do you switch from Lord of the Rings to Succession? And sure, people love Succession. They're both incredibly beloved properties that have won a ton of awards. But Succession is an HBO drama, whereas Lord of the Rings was a big screen blockbuster. They have different expectations. So how do you shift between the two for one property that's should Dune Messiah maybe be a series? But how would you do that? I don't see them doing that. But if it all works out, if Denis Villeneuve can pull it off, right, there's even more to do with the next generation, Children of Dune. That's a crazy story. That gets even weirder. But Villeneuve has said he'll be done with Dune after the third film, after Dune Messiah. But when you jump to the next generation, that's the perfect reason to bring in a new director as well. Fascinatingly, Children of Dune was already adapted as a miniseries, back when miniseries were, not what they are today, but that was back in 2003, and as you can see, starring Mr. James McAvoy. The history! As I said, things get even crazier and weirder in the world of Dune as the story progresses, but can we get that far? Honestly, I think we'll get to Dune Messiah, but then, Children of Dune does have a considerable amount of action. So I think it's weird. You have to get through this quieter chapter to get to the more explosive storytelling. So it's going to take some real finesse, and maybe add a little bit of action. Now that's the big question. What do you want to see going forward from Dune? If you're a fan of the books or if you're new to the story, you just experienced them through the movies. How do you think they can solve this problem of the lack of action? And also, the age of the actors. But the lack of action to me is the biggest sticking point. Because as I said, I think the Dune's fans, the hardcore fans from the books, you guys are purists. So how are you going to feel if they add action? Wouldn't you be okay with it if it meant keeping the franchise going? All right, share your thoughts. The only thing I can think of is that maybe you shorten Messiah and you bring in part of Children of Dune. Maybe that's what you do. I think that might be a good idea. Let's see well, Villeneuve's almost done with the script, so let's see what he decided. All right, share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.